guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, I want to talk about the PTSD that you get from the narcissist, and also, so what happened was I experienced a narcissistic father, and unfortunately, because my mother chose to not protect us from him, and she also partnered up with another man after they separated that was very similar to my father in nature, right? And so they both have chosen to continue being toxic, and there's a lot of trauma associated with that. And it's weird because it was like a gray zone. It's weird because we had enough food, not a lot of food, but like we struggled with food, but we had food, we had toys, we had when I looked at pictures from the past, like we had our house, like I looked at our house and I'm like, that was a comfortable house. We had a nice backyard. It was a condo, but like I'm looking at the home feeling like that shouldn't feel like we were struggling, because I feel like we had so much. So it's confusing when you look back to that and don't understand it. And my dad likes to send me things in the mail, even though I told him not to. And this is the one thing I actually looked at, and I think he was hoping for a different reaction, but in reality, it gave me a lot more questions, which in turn gave me a lot more clarity. Because I remember, like, when I looked at the pictures of me and my kids, I'm like, do you remember that time? Like, I feel like we had so many good times. And I'm like, well, we don't really remember it. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't remember my childhood. Like, I had certain things, but I don't remember a lot of it. And like, well, I can look back and be nostalgia and be like, oh, I remember I used to really like sitting on that couch. It was really comfy, you know? Or I can look back and say, you know, I'm pretty sure we had fun that day on Canada Day. And I remember Mom used to make really good cheesecakes. And I remember good memories. It's not that I don't have some good memories, but when you look at the person you are at such a young age, where did that come from? In your home, you know? And because you're developed in a home, it's kind of like in the womb, in the egg, like a lot of shit can happen, but it's also like the home is like an external yolk, so to speak. So like things are happening within there that aren't talked about outside of the home. You know, a lot of people met my dad and wouldn't necessarily, if they're not looking for it, think that he was a bad person, because he comes off as really interested in certain things, and like he can show up when he needs to for other people, but not necessarily for his family. And so it was really confusing trying to pinpoint, like, you know, there's not always like, you know, there's some kids that grew up literally without food in the home. There were some kids that literally had no clothing. There were some kids that grew up with abusive alcoholic parents, and I'm like, wow, how did you overcome that? And there are times where for me it's been in so much challenge, because in the gray area of abuse, you should be fine, you should be okay. And so what I feel was missing here was that emotional connection. So having money does help, though. Like, if with it not having money, like trying to, so the less money you have, the less resources, the harder you have to work, because now you got to go on an empty stomach looking for food that you never had, trying to get it with money that you never had. Like, that would be more challenging, and I can understand that, right? So like, we had some food, but we had a lot of like my dad would bring back a lot of bread, and like he was really into his like pastries and stuff. Mom would make meat, but it was overcooked, so I don't know that we were really like interested in that kind of like protein. And so I think to feed the family, there was a lot of like bready, refined carbs that spread across. Mind you, like Dad had a lot of CDs, Dad had a lot of computer equipment, so it's like if he went without some of that stuff, maybe we would have had more for like the healthier protein and things. So there were things that you're just like, it seemed normal enough, but then you remember those moments. Like I remember someone had shot our window with a BB gun, and we had locked my brother outside because we were scared of him. And so he started banging on the window, and he cracked that window because of the BB gun. And now we're like, oh my God, now we're all in shit. That's crazy, right? Because we locked him out, but we were scared of him. But I was scared of my brother. And now, as an adult, like he's, you know, he's a jokester, and he's really funny, and he's considered the best father. And I'm looking at him like he doesn't discipline his kid. He doesn't. There's just some stuff where I'm like, I'm not saying he's a bad father. That's the thing. It's a gray zone. It's like, you know what? Like maybe you have the right intentions, but you don't have the right actions to carry it through. And you have to understand, like when you're with the wrong partner too, that can really make things challenging. So if you have a good cop, bad cop, that's not going to work well. You both need to be on the same page. You both need to be in the same moment, good cop, bad cop kind of thing. And well, who needs a cop? Like, can we just be a parent? A parent can bring themselves down to their child's level in order to teach them in a way that they'll understand, but also that they'll absorb the information, not like up above like a tyrant telling them you need to do this. And so I received that parent that was a tyrant, that would tell us to do things that he wasn't doing. He would always harp on us about cleaning up the counter of the breadcrumbs. So when we got older, we would love to point out, like, Dad, you just made toast and you left breadcrumbs. So who's cleaning up your breadcrumbs? Probably Mom, right? So it is really like a my way or the highway parenting. And it was really based in like, I'm holier than thou. I'm the head of the household, so everything I do is right and everything you do is wrong. And so with that idea and dynamic set, like you can never be right. So you always have to listen to me, be obedient to the parent. I know I heard that in religion. And so me also being the parent that you have to respect and obey, you always have to forgive me. And if I do something, it's because I had to, because you as a child are disobedient and you don't know anything really, and you're still learning. So I must be right and you must be wrong. And so when you grow up in that sort of environment, there is no connection. There's no emotionality. There is, for me, I don't enjoy being around my parents. I don't think they're fun. I don't think it's enjoyable. I feel like they're wet rags. And part of that problem is like with my father, it's always about him. It's always been about him. And in life that made me want to be the opposite of him and made me want to hide, because I was afraid at some point when I was learning how to mirror about my parents, it made me be like, am I being like my dad? Am I over talking a stranger? Am I, are their eyes glossing over? Because as an empath who is hermited and isolated, and also as a child who has been isolated, you don't get that sort of like experience communicating and practicing your speech and practicing that sort of thing and getting more confident in it. And so it wasn't until later in life that when I worked for the post office, where I actually started flexing my voice, and we're like, there were rows of us, so like if you said something, the chances are like a lot of people would hear it. And that's kind of the point, for the team. Like we would all joke around in the mornings, and like we would all play off each other, and it was fun. And it took me a lot to get into that sort of like comfort, even though I recognized later that there were a lot of predators in that room too. That's not the point. The point was for me to stop caring so much about how I'm showing up, and like the fact that I felt insecure, and start getting experience in that, whether I'm doing it right or wrong, right? And so a lot of things happened that were hidden. And even when I started like my healing journey, working on myself, like when I start speaking on some of these things, like my family members don't want to hear it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They want to, it's kind of like they move away from you, and they don't, even when you try to talk to them one-on-one about the issues, like they don't want to hear it, and they want to be condescending. They want to push you down, suppress you, confuse you, gaslight you. And these are all the things like I didn't realize I was experiencing as a child. And so these are my second nature. Not just being treated like this, but also these were my examples that I had to learn by. So for me, I wasn't allowed to be emotional to my parent or my partners, but I was being emotionally abused in the way that I was being overworked, overwhelmed, and never reciprocated. There's nothing ever given back to me. It's always taking, dumping. So like if they didn't give anything back, it was more work, something I would have to work through. It's kind of like, they give you like a bag of garbage and you'd have to go through that to look for food. Now I didn't actually have to do that, but I'm just saying it's kind of like they think they're doing you a favor. In reality, they're just trying to control you, trying to knock you down from achieving something that's for you. And well, you're not doing it the right way. Well, let me learn and I'll figure it out. And I just need you to support me from the side instead of, block me from the front or stab me in the back. And so the PTSD I experienced later on, and it's a clarity as well. It helped me realize it's like, so when my kids were teenagers, and even just young teenagers, and I was trying to get them to help around the house, it was like pulling teeth. And I just thought all kids were like that. And just because a lot of people are doing something doesn't make it right. Kids are capable since they're little to help clean up. They just need to be taught. They need to be held accountable and encouraged, right? Not like talking down to, pointing fingers, intimidated, fear mongering. Well, you're not going to get anything from Santa if you don't clean up your room, and the Easter Bunny's not showing up if you don't do the dishes. That's fear mongering. We need to teach, like, when we do this allows us to do this, and when this is done, we feel like this. A clean house feels good. A clean house allows us to do all the things that we want in life because it's organized, and we're saving time because we know where to find things, we know where to put things back, and now we're two birds, one stone. And so what felt like a lot in the beginning to learn, now as we've gotten good at it, it's second nature, and it's not a burden. It's just us, right? And so when I had my kids start rebelling and and this is at the point too where I was becoming exhausted, because as a single parent I'd been financially abused, and it was I had people that were the closest to me that were taking from me, but also were like dismantling me at the same time. I had a sister that would call me when she was pissed drunk, and like this conversation would start out fine, and then something would happen and she would like unleash on me. That would happen where sometimes she wasn't drunk. That was during that period where she was drinking, and then she stopped drinking so much, but she would still be very passive aggressive, and she would also be highly micromanaging. But she would also like the idea of like me working for her, but never her working for me, So like the only time she would feel like I didn't mind helping. I love helping people. But what I don't like is when there's not an equal give and take. And that's what, that's triggering sometimes too with the YouTube channel, because it feels like you're getting views and you're not getting a lot of likes. So like, I have to look at how I'm making my material too. But I know what I'm saying is valuable. So that can be a little bit frustrating, but I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna work until I find people who are valuing what I'm gonna say in the way that they can reciprocate, the way that they know social media works. It's not brain surgery. People know how the system works. So so during these younger years of my kids, where they're now like, I'm like, okay, like I'm getting more tired and they're making a mess and they're not picking it up. That was really challenging for me, because it was triggering for me, because it's exactly what I had experienced, that I had recognized why I couldn't partner with these people in the past, because they were not willing to pull their own weight. They expected me to do most of the work while they sat back and took on all the reward, And at one point it was really challenging, because the thing was, this is what you have to be aware of. When I had been, and this is part of the last video of why you close these doors, because these people in your past did this intentionally. So now you're like, okay, these are my younger kids. Now they're narcissistic, which young kids can be. If they have not been taught certain things since 0 to 5 years old and built on those things that make them a well-balanced, healthy individual, then it makes sense that they don't have those tools and those habits in place. So yes, those kids are going to be narcissistic. And so the problem is, it's very different from, in my opinion, when you have a younger child who is still learning and growing, and there's those developmental years, as opposed to an adult who has chosen to do this time and time and time and time again. And even so, like, this can be someone who's been abused, who has turned into the abuser, and is now making excuses. Well, I've been abused, so I'm allowed to be emotionally unhinged. I have ADHD, so I can be emotionally unhinged. No, you cannot. You still need to deal with your shit. You're still messy. Yes, you've been abused, but now you are the abuser. And so part of that helped me recognize within me also where I was, okay, for one thing, I was reacting too strongly to my kids' behavior because it was like their first sort of like real issue kind of thing, and I was responding from the years of abuse, and so I had to apologize and revise. I'm like, you know what? When I came out of that workplace for 2 years and I was being bullied, there was a time where my son had said something to my daughter, and it was not a joke, and he was just trying to joke, but I said, that's not funny, and you're actually putting her down, and so I can't do that. But I didn't say it calmly like that. I was like, no, we don't do that, we're not bullying. And it was louder than that. I'm not going to do it on camera, but it was louder, it was inappropriate, and it did shock him. And I was trying to get to the point, like, we don't do that. That was not the right teaching moment. And so I had to bring myself back, take some space, and come back into the room and say, explain how my response is too strong because of what I've been through. I can't tolerate bullying. What you did was bullying, but no, you did not deserve that strong response. And so I explained to him what he had done and why it's not funny. And I had to revise. And so this triggering is still a sign that you are not healed. You still have work to do. So just because you may have recognized the abuser, just because you've recognized narcissistic behavior, I had to look within myself to say, I'm still, now I'm the abuser too. And some people don't like that label. And when I used it with a family member, they didn't like it and they called me rude. And I'm like, well, you know what? Obviously you're not receptive, because like I didn't like it, but I had to manage it and change it. And so I can change, so they can change too if they want to. And when you get into this, you're like, they just have to want it. And so something is working for them, and that is not fair to me. And so that's one of the things that I had to recognize, is that my responses to my kids, who were just teenagers and adults, was very different and unacceptable because of the behavior that I endured before then. They were showing up like their father and my father and my past partner. Now, I have experienced abuse from men and women, and I think it does show up a bit differently. But in this case, I also had to I lost it. Recognize. I just had it. Give me a minute. What I was trying to get after was when I started recognizing, like, my kids, yes, they're narcissistic, but this also prompted me, like, why? Because I hadn't given them discipline. I'd given them a lot of, like, nurturing, sort of like cuddles, and I didn't get the cuddles. I didn't get the attention. I didn't get that, but I gave that to my kids, maybe in too much. I don't think so, but I didn't pair it up with the discipline. That's what I was missing, the discipline, holding them accountable. You know, I was overly emotional because I had felt the other end of things, where I had understood the angry, cruel, like, in, you know, these faces, and the disconnect, the neglect, the no conversation. So, like, when my kids were younger, when they're like younger, like I think around 8, I'm gonna say, I started talking to them about sex and their body parts and what those are and how we talk about that. I talked to them about stranger danger, you know, we're not to touch, and all these things. But I talked to them, like, I didn't use like weird names and labels for the body parts. We used real body parts, because if I'm uncomfortable, it's gonna make them uncomfortable, and I didn't want to, like, beat around the bush. I'm like, this is the body part, that's what it's called. So then it also made it more comfortable, not completely more comfortable, but more comfortable for an uncomfortable area of conversation when they got older, that I could not only continue coming to them, and whether they were coming to me or not, it also made it so, like, now I'm going to talk to you about this, and now when you're older, we're going to talk about, you know, if you're getting into romantic connections, if you can't have a conversation about him wearing a condom, and if you can't support a child right now, you should probably not be having sex, and no matter what. And I said, if he's not calling you back and he's not interested in you, then you're not interested in him, you know. And the things around these, and like, and I talked to my kids about, like, if you're feeling this, we talked more about emotions. This is older now. This is when they're older. I wish I would have done more of that sooner, but I didn't, and so I'm doing it now. It's better late than never, right? I'm giving my kids what I never received. I didn't know how to do it, so I didn't do it, but that doesn't mean I can't do it. And so some people will claim that they're an empath and wonder why their kids are estranged from them. And it's because when you can be a wounded empath that is so caught up in the emotion. And here's the thing too, in spirituality, some people will talk about you're picking up on their emotions, you're picking up on their energy, and it's really disconnecting from the responsibility of you and what you're still showing, how you're still showing up. So I don't believe in like I'm picking up on other people's emotions. I don't believe in that because now that puts me in an unaccountable place where I'm experiencing saying that I'm picking up on someone's energetic emotional place, or like I'm picking up on their emotions that they're feeling right now for me, and blah blah blah, really disconnects me from the fact that I still have more work to do. It puts me up here, it puts me more in a God complex where I know more and they know less. And it also puts me in a place of stagnancy, because as long as I'm claiming that I'm feeling someone else's emotions and that's what it is, it's not my emotions, it's not from my choices, and it's not from my environment and my ability to regulate myself, now I have not done the work. And so now that is a victim stance. And so I don't believe in that. And I did at one point, until I got to the point where like, no, I'm actually feeling this way. No, this is me. And that's why honestly in readers, why I'm not so invested in the readings anymore. I find it can be helpful, but a lot of it is, not only are you reading your own energy, a lot of readers are reading their own energy and they don't even realize it. And that's why they're so uncomfortable and they're like, I can't do my own reading. Well, that's because you could, but you're uncomfortable with the answers that are coming back because you think you've grown more than you actually have. And while they have had growth, they have to keep going. But because they put themselves in this role of being like a mentor and a leader, they actually have a lot more work to do. And so that's why I stopped going to other readers, and that's why I stopped offering readings as well. It's one of the things where I also found it really is like there's a lot of things that I'm like, I can pull out how many guilt cards, I can pull out cards that tell me what to do, but like the timing can be off. It's not 100, and even me choosing right now what I should do, that's all me. And if I fuck up, I have to be the one to change. And so it really felt kind of codependent, still relying. And while I've never relied on cards, I'll be like, well, no, that's exactly what I'm feeling. So that's confirmation. But at the same time, it really was not, because it was giving me like false hope. And so when you go high, you come down low. And so I needed to learn how to bring myself up, but not bring myself up, but keep myself consistently neutral. And so that's why I also am moving away from the cards. I just felt like while they had some helpful confirmations, it wasn't something I really wanted to rely on any longer. And they look good, right? And I associate that, like, a lot of men will go for women that look good and wonder why they ended up being bamboozled by them and abused by them. But it's because you were leading by looks. You weren't leading by, is this safe? Is this right? Is this real? And so that's where I've had to step away from it. And I realized, you know what? I want to move more into my action. I want to do things where I'm moving my body. And it was just another reason to sit in a chair, really. And I'm sitting in a chair now, but I feel like it's more cutthroat in the way that it's more painful truths that I need to know in order to get me to where I'm going, instead of a lot of filler and fluff. And so while some of those painful truths can hit you hard, sometimes they crack your heart open and they give you that purge of emotion, that frustration of where, like, no, I don't want this to be true, because if this is true, this means I have more work to do. And if that means I have more work to do, that means I can't get what I want when I want it. And that means I can't jump to my prize instead of, pull yourself up. So that's kind of an explanation as to that. And so I think that's also where a lot of spiritual beliefs got me stuck too, is it keeps me stuck. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, forgiving is important. I find forgiving myself is the biggest thing, because I feel like it's attached to guilt. So like when I feel guilty, I do things out of guilt, and giving to my kids out of guilt is not going to help them. It's not going to help me. And it put pressure on me. And it also made me give the wrong things for the wrong reasons. My kids, yes, they needed love, but they needed nurturing, not necessarily from an animal, but from their own mother. And if I was emotionally unavailable because of my painful past and my trauma, there was no room to give to my children. And so like I just thought, like, I'll make sure they have this, I'll make sure they have that, and that's gonna help. And it didn't. You know what helped the most is sitting with my child one-on-one, even now as adults, having one-on-one time, discussing things that address them personally, that I have experienced in my life realistically, without putting judgment on them and their potential or upcoming maybe decisions or habits in life, and telling them, I did this too. When I was your age, I did this too. I did it because of this, and this is why, and this is the result. And when you're real with your kids, I think they really appreciate it, not only because it's like an up close reality, you know, cause and reaction sort of thing. Is that what you call it? Cause and reaction? It's real life. It's not someone on TV. It's not a hearsay. It's not gossip. It's not coming from a Bible or a book of you should be like this and you should be like that. You know, it's reality. It's like, I did this, I am imperfect, I messed up, I make mistakes, I am still your parent, you know? And so it also opens the avenue for communication. And there are times where, like when I was driving my daughter back and forth, there are times where we would sit in quiet, and there's times where she doesn't call, and there's times where I have to give her a break, but I also push her when we're sitting there and it's quiet and she'd rather listen to music. That's where I turn down the radio and I start asking questions, and I get interested. And then at first it's like pulling teeth, but then she starts to respond, and she gets interested, and she wants to give me information, and she wants to share. But before, there would be times where I was so emotionally unhinged because of all the things that were happening in my life, because of all the wrong people, but all my wrong decisions based on all the wrong advice and wrong belief systems that I was raised in and supported in, and on a whole in society. I was not available to her or my son. And any sort of burden that they had, they didn't feel like, they felt, poor mom, she's always struggling. And so now they don't feel like they can bring their problems to you to get the help that they need. And that sort of even just to have someone to talk it out, someone just to give them validation, like I'm doing the right thing, or maybe, you know what, maybe we could do this better, maybe we could do this. Taking the time, that emotional place took time from me, from my kids, that abuse, right? But then I also had to recognize I disconnected from them, and it was still taking time. So that's the thing, is like, part of, like, if you ever need a reason, if you're feeling confused with a connection and you can't tell if they love you, that is the time to be by yourself, because you either don't know what you need to feel loved and you don't recognize it. And I had to recognize I was in friendships that were not true friendships. I was in connections that were not loving or nurturing or caring. And so the more time I spent by myself, and I developed these things, I had to do these things for myself instead of be dependent on other connections. That's when I really learned, like, what did I need? And how can I provide that? And how was I not receiving that from these people? And so, like, people might say, well, then maybe you didn't know what you could ask for, so maybe they didn't know what to give you. But in reality, if people aren't sticking around long enough to hold these conversations, they don't have the capacity to have them. Whether they're angry at you, envious of you, not wanting to do the work, feeling stuck, whatever, that's not all your responsibility. You got to focus on you and yours. It's me and mine. That's all I'm responsible for at this point. And so I know, like, once again, I spoke another video for this PTSD. Like, I had to, there are times when I was so scared, because I'm like, oh my God, are my kids turning out to be like my family members, like my partners, like my things? And like, well, my kids did have narcissistic traits. It makes sense for where they are at in life, you know, with the history that they had. That's not an excuse. We have to still, you know, work together. And I realized I was just, there are times when, you know, the kids weren't cleaning up after themselves, and when I couldn't clean up after myself, is because I was depressed and I was tired. And so instead of, I assumed they were being rebellious and they were making me do the work because they didn't want to, and that's not the case. They can't see things that they still need to work through, but I can see the trauma. And so I had to remove that resentment that we talked about before, and grieve that and what I didn't receive, and give to myself. But then when you give that to yourself, now you learn how to give it to your kids and show up for your kids. So that's like how you move forward. And So in doing this, it's allowed me to be way more kinder, patient, and compassionate to my kids while they learn, because they are learning and they are growing. But here's the challenging part. I never had a safety net. I want to be that safety net for them, because I would have loved a safety net. I think I grew so fast and furious because I felt that pressure of, like, when you watch, what is it, like Indiana Jones or something, when that wall is pressing and you got to figure out a solution. It's like your brain almost goes into like survival mode overdrive, and it's like I had no choice but to remove these fillers because I was not getting the results that I needed in the time that I needed them. So at certain times, these are very helpful, because I realized, like, not only did I have, like, I didn't want my kids, I was trying to learn so I could teach them, so they didn't have to, because they're coming up to the age of where I would have had my kids, which was at 23 when I first got pregnant with my son. And so I'm like, okay, God, like, I feel like I'm a bit on a timeline here, a crunch, because I need them to learn things so that they don't do the same things that I did, in a way that, not to micromanage, but also not to enable, but also to nurture and to be open, and understanding that I had to go back and relearn things before I could move further in life. And I'm starting to see some of those things where they might have to do that. And so, like, I need to get myself in a place where they feel safe to come rely on me, if they need to, in whatever capacity that is. And while I did have my kids move out when they were younger, like, I think my son was 19, maybe, I think either on the edge of, he might have, I don't know if he was 18. I know we're talking about it when he was 18. I don't know if he actually, I know I did kick him out, because he was just binge watching TV. He was not being honest. He was not helping out. And so to me, I was like, well, you need a dose of reality. And I don't know that that was right. I did it because I didn't want him to become his father. That's why I did it. And so I did the same. My daughter wanted to move back to London when she was 17, but then she came back one time after that, because she moved to a couple places outside of that home, and then she did come back home. So for me, my door is open for my kids, but I also want to encourage them to become uncomfortable, but I also want to let them know, like, if it comes down to it, I have 2 bedrooms. There will always be 2 bedrooms in my house for my kids. While they're my office and they're a dog room for now, that I have other rooms that I can move that to, and so those will always, I always have 2 rooms for my kids dedicated to them, if and when the time comes. But I also am trying to encourage them to push past their own things. And something I'm having to work on is stop with all the lessons and take some time for joy and play, because I've had to do the same thing. I'm like, okay, enough lessons. I need to rest. I need to take some time out to do the things that I want to do. And sometimes those are still work, but sometimes it's like, there was a day I spent a whole day, maybe a weekend, of playing games on my phone, because I really enjoyed the puzzles. And it was like a different sort of, like, it was a challenge, not a failure, if that makes sense. And it was more fun. I'm like, no, I know I can do this. And there are times I'm like, oh, this one's hard. I don't know. And I just had to give myself a few more tries at it, and I got the puzzle. So it's another way that it's actually revising me, my resilience and my bounce back, just through, like, playing a game. But it was more fun this time. And so it also, that helps me transition into my other challenges, and remembering, okay, like, this is not my forever. This is in the moment. I don't have to freak out. I don't have to go down low. I just have to remember, like, this is a challenge. I've gone through, how many challenges in the past have I gone through before? I can do this too. And so there are times when my son was coming back, and due to his work, like, he would just leave stuff laying around, and there was a lot of mess he was making, and he just wasn't observant of his surroundings. And I realized it wasn't a carelessness. This is not careless. This is, he has some things, he's got too much going on. And so that switched for me in the way where it wasn't like him targeting me like others had in the past. And while he is, my kids are in their 20s now, I'm realizing where they at, I think, in their growth, and where I also see, here's the difference. See, with my kids, there's effort, there's work, and there's like a want. There's like a curiosity there. They're trying, they're looking. You know, I give them advice, if anything, try to build your own business. That way you can be not only the boss, but then you can also make your own hours, and you can make money while you sleep. That's what I'm teaching my kids. Nobody taught me that. Everyone taught me to do a 9 to 5. I was not encouraged to go to school. I was encouraged to join more social clubs, which is really politicking and not working. And it's more codependent. So this is, nobody taught me this. I've learned something. I'm still learning it. Obviously, I'm not good at it. I'm not making money right now, but I'm getting there. You know, I've had to work at other things before I can make the money. And I'll do another video on that too, of kind of like the process that I've had to learn on rebirth. And I kind of did a video, but I don't know if I did it complete. But, and so that PTSD, if you don't heal yourself, you're going to be triggered by your kids, because chances are, if you were too empathic, you were over nurturing, and you could have been enabling to your kids, and it was out of what you didn't receive. And like, you remember we talked about that, going from one end to the other. You went from a cruel, cold, isolated, neglected home, and so you want to create the opposite, a cozy. And so like, this is part of cozy. This is trying to renovate my home without the money, because I just needed a safe space to feel done, and without, like, I just wanted to have the work done because my system was overworked. So that was also my 0 to 90. So I had to be aware that I do that, right? And so I had to come back to middle, where it's like, yes, I need to be, you know, disciplined with my kids. We need to have these hard conversations, but we also need to have these fun times, which may not feel fun right now. So sometimes, like, we have foosball. Foosball has been our game. Crokinole, we play, we love that too. But sometimes my kids are so stressed where they just want to sit and watch a movie, and that's our time, and that's what it needs to be. It's not. That's going to be a season. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we can go play the sports. And if I can't play the sports with them right now, I'm going to go play my sports, because I'm going to continue my growth, so that I have something to give back to them, to be like, well, I couldn't do this until I went through all of this. And so if this is your goal, you want to get back into your body, back into your health, you may have to take some time out, which feels like a loss, but in actual is a gain in order to move forward. Like, think about this. If you had, my past 47 years have been quite painful in life, but if I can make my life better, and if I can improve my health and my wealth, then that means I still have, I'm going to assume, 50 years to really, if I learn to take care of myself and prioritize my health and my wealth, then I can potentially have 50 years of happiness and joy, right? So it's a choice, and it's the way you look at it. And if you don't do anything, you're going to always be in this. And so that's where I had to revise it. And this is how I talk to my kids. I talk to them without the emotion, without, you know, it has to be more about like, well, like, you don't have to do this, but if you continue to do this, what is that going to look like? You know, asking questions and allowing them to also come up with the answers has been helpful, because you're just kind of like, okay, like, I mean, I also tell them how I do stuff, and then they may not hear it in the moment and do anything right away, but it's going to come back around later, because sometimes it's that seed that's been planted that comes up. Like, you can plant a seed in the fall and it comes up in the spring. And sometimes that's the way with our kids too. They hear you. Trust me, they hear you, because there are times when I didn't think my young kids heard me, and they would reverberate or repeat that information. I'm like, oh, I didn't think you were listening. Like, no, I heard that. I saw that. Kids are watching. Okay, they're very, they can be like sponges, but like, here's the problem. When you get stuck in that resentment, that's when, that's what I've seen in the people that I've dealt with that discard me and just want to like trigger, like they let their triggers loose, they're unhinged, they're messy, they're out of control. These people are stuck in, I think, that like, life is unfair, everyone's against me, blame game. And while I had essences of that still that I had to work through, I still can look at and I can say, okay, well, this is, when this happened before, I learned this happened. Okay, we know what this looks like. We know this playbook. Now I've got the information outside of the emotion. And so when you learn to do that, and you can help do that with your kids, and you become now, not just through advice, but through your action and experience. Like, it wasn't until like I had to help my son with something, my kids have seen me like do the work in my home, and I've had them in the yard. They know what it feels like to dig holes and rip up sod. They know what that feels like. So when they can now see me doing that now, after I've experienced all of this abuse and burden, it shows them something, right? That they maybe didn't see before. And I don't see this every day, so there's a good chance they're not seeing it every day either. Like the amount of people, I've met more people that are, and like I said, maybe this is because of where I'm at in my lack of elevation, and like I need to grow more to attract more. That could be as well. But they're gonna have to go through that gauntlet of grossness, of garbage people, and so I can't hold their hand, but I can walk beside them and I can support them. And so like I never had that safe space to go home to. You got to think this is a hard world. I don't care what you say. While there is kindness sprinkled in there, there is goodness to take from it and appreciate. There is a lot of ugly harshness in here. So for me, that's my home, is my safe space. I am home. I don't know why that is so emotional. I am home to my kids. Oh, that one hit. I think it's because I've just never had that before. Do you see how sometimes like you think you're good and then you say something and there's something more to it? There's something more in there. So like I'm continuing. The more I push, the more I press, the more I'm that sponge that is like really wringing out that emotion. And the emotion isn't negative. It's like, it's the grieving. It's the sadness, you know? I don't have to be sad. I'm doing different for my kids and I can see it. So this is something I have to grieve for myself, because I'm developing it within myself. It's unfortunate that I couldn't grow with my family and have them as a safe space. This is, in my last video, this is emotional, so I'm gonna have to do take some time out for that today. There's a tender spot in there. So yeah, that's something I definitely feel has benefited me when I was being triggered by my kids and I'm like, oh, they're narcissistic. Yes, that makes sense, because when you actually go to compare the narcissist to your kids, that's where they're stopped and stuck in, is like at that low, it's like these people all have jobs, they know how to make money, and they know how to own a home, but they don't know a lot of like that's kind of like that's like me being you know, being able to get my first job, and then also being able to get an apartment, and now I'm grown. That's kind of their mindset. Like I did this, I did that, now I'm grown. Okay, so like that's the ceiling that they're hitting. And so instead of, like, you know, when you have a plant that's kind of grown out of that lid in that grow box, you need to take off the lid and let them grow. They don't take off the lid. They don't figure out how to take, they just kind of encroach amongst the other seedlings and plants there to try to take up all the sun, all the air, all the water. That's weird. That's the first time I've thought of it that way, but that's how it is. And so now they're taking all the nutrients in the dirt. And so instead of growing and reaching out, you know, and rising above and letting others still grow, and instead of, like, you know, the roots would grow deeper and not spread out shallowly with a weak root system, they choose, this is a choice, to not take the strength and build the strength to push that lid up and off and like grow out in a way that it doesn't hurt anybody else, doesn't take from anybody else. They rely on other people to do things for them, and they use that as their cover, as their cape. If they're trying to help people, they'll take credit for other people's work, they'll parrot my information, they will prey on other people who are in confusion. That's why I can't, I see who you're around, I see who your constant environment is, and I see how messy that is, and even if I think you have potential, that is not a project for me, because these people are still, like, if you can't see that predator in full version, I can't rock with you. It's just not safe. It's not worth it for the bricks that I've built. I'm not having anybody unbrick them. And so there are times where I would be really hopeless, because I feel like I would see certain signs in my kids that were like displaying certain things like that too, and I'm like, oh my god, like, but that pushed me. That allowed me to stay consistent as well. I don't know if we want to call it a motivator. Different words mean different things, and I think sometimes we associate different things with different words, and they're not actually, like, you know, love. What is love? what is family, and I've seen the dysfunction of those things, not the real things. So I don't really like to use those words, because that family was not my family. They were of my DNA, but they did not treat me like family, that the way family should be treated, right? And even though I've loved someone, I'm looking back, and where I love my kids and I was in an unhealthy place, I gave love to people who did not love me, and so that was not love. That was a trauma bond. And I've had a video in the past where I said I didn't love them. I gave love to them, but I was also looking for love. So I think that's normal in a loving connection. You're looking for love from somebody, and you're looking to give love. Like I want somebody to cook me a meal. I don't want to be the one always cooking the meal. It'd be nice to have someone to cook me something good too. I think that's normal. The expectation of like what I have to give is what I'm going to receive, and that used to be a big thing for me. Is like, I want to become a healthier partner so I can attract a healthier partner, right? And so that's been kind of part of my process, is like, that's why I want my money right. And I've had someone say, well, I didn't have my money right and I still found love. But for me, money comes with control. And so if you don't know how to make money on your own, and you don't have that ability to do that, that to me sounds like a dangerous dynamic personally. And so that's why I didn't take that advice. And so for me, I want to be a stable partner who is financially stable, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in the way of my beliefs and what I believe and what I don't believe to be true, and delusions. And so I'm revising myself until I get there. And so like I think that part of the problem with my kids too is like, they've also seen me go through all these things, and I think that has also made them, I think it's been helpful but hindering at times, because they're like, well, when you believed in this and you were trying to help us with this, I didn't really believe in that. And I'm like, I get it. I totally get it. So now we have these conversations, we talk about, and now we're able to have conversations about different interests that we have and different belief systems. And there are times that I have to put a line down, like, this belief that you have is not healthy, and you've picked this up from an unhealthy person. And I have to look at me, because there's some times where I hear stuff, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, but I think what you're going after is maybe a group of people, and not a race, and while a lot of races have certain cultures, like, I can get caught up in that too, where I feel like, you have a race that comes over and it supposedly treats our country disrespectfully, but at the same time we have people in our own country that do the same thing to our own country. We have, people are talking about immigrants coming over and saying they're taking up our funds. Well, we have people here who have lived here since the day they were born here and are taking up our funds. So we have to really reflect, and it's just something that I had to work on, and just an example of my belief system where I'm working through this, because you can really, I've had a lot of different mentors and people and belief systems that I'm trying to work through, and a lot of them sound like they make sense. And I have gone from liberal to conservative to where I'm trying to like really stay in the middle, because I think both sides have great arguments, and a lot of them both have toxic bullshit, right? And so I'm teaching my kids that too. I'm like, you know what? Don't necessarily look for a group. Look for like how you want to be treated, how you want to be perceived. How when you show up in a new environment, what is that? Do you want people to make assumptions based on what? An ex-boyfriend that they had, and because you have the same haircut? That's weird. Like all your things about you are not going to be that ex. Well, it's just weird. So I've had to look at that myself. And I've also had to try to teach my kids that, because I do feel like one is more conservative and one is more liberal. And I've learned some things from both of them, but I also think there's some things they have to learn from me too. So the trio of us are actually growing together. And I think I learn things from my kids, and I do see that they're learning things from me, and whether it not be learning or just me showing up better for them so that they can get their own answers. And so yeah, it's like looking at where, okay, like I thought I taught you this in childhood, I did not, and so now I need to make space for you as an adult where we can work with this, and so you can pick this up. Now I don't know if that's going to work, because I couldn't pick that up until I gave myself a certain level of rest, and maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't. I can't force that for my kids, but I can teach them and support them without the necessary enabling them. This is me not yes-manning them when they have a belief system that I don't believe in. This is having that conversation and being okay with, we didn't come to a conclusion together, but we did plant some seeds and let those seeds grow when they have time on their own. That's why I do believe having kids out on their own is important. Both my kids have been able to do that within this economy and this situation without me doing anything for them. And so also seeing them do that makes me realize like these other adults could have done that because they had a much better income and source of income. And so it's really interesting when you see, remember in a past video if you watched, how some strangers like can just be kind to you like easily, and then when you realize your family really went out on a limb to make life difficult for you, to make you feel hard to love and live, it's really mind-boggling, and it really opens up your mind to like, okay, what else is going on here? What else? And in a world that you thought was so gray and kind of normal and not a big deal, but not a bad deal, not the worst deal, but not the best deal, but still damaging, still abusive. And so not only did I have to recognize where I experienced that, but I was also carrying that on with my kids by being an empath and a wounded one. And that's what I mean. Like I'm a still caring person. I guess I recently had a situation with the bunny. If you watch my video on that, I am an empath, but in the past I was wounded and I didn't know how to give or how to receive, and I'm still working on those things and understanding I have a lot of room to grow into, and so it's just a choice. I'm just choosing it. And I think when you keep choosing you, when I kept choosing me and mine, that's all I kept doing is and sometimes I made mistakes, but I would learn and I keep going. And I'm like, okay, that's not a no, that's I needed more information before I could move further, right? And so some of those things is a lot of slowing down and taking your time and realizing, like, just because I didn't teach my kids this earlier on in life does not mean I can't do that now. Just because we have had, you just have to keep trying. And that's all me and my kids are doing is keep trying. And I've given them the room now, like where they can speak up now. And I've worked on myself, so I'm not gonna like just start. I mean, there's still tears involved at times, and I always explain, like, I'm not sad. I'm just emotionally like this is emotional for me, and so like you're not doing anything wrong. This is not you. This is a me thing, and so they know that. And because like emotions can be manipulative, and they can trigger something within a kid to not want to hurt their parent, and then put their needs in the back. And that's not what kids are meant to do. Kids are meant to develop themselves so they feel very confident in speaking up for themselves, for their needs, and on behalf of themselves. Kids are meant to learn how to advocate for themselves at a very young age. And so it took me a long time in life to learn how to advocate for myself. In my 40s, I'm still struggling with it. So can you imagine, what if I had this when I was a child? I think that would be very different for our kids. And so like I'm having to give this now to them. So it's now or never. And for me, now is better than never. And that's just what I'm doing. And so I think it's important to, is it uncomfortable? Yeah. I've had conversations with my kids and experiences in my own relationships. And I push past an area, not to be too TMI, but I think it's important for them to know this can happen to people like them. And so that's where it's important to sit down and have those conversations. And it's not meant to be, I'm unloading this burden onto you. This is meant to be a conversation, piece by piece, part by part, here and there, where what you're doing, I did that too, and I did it because of this. But why are you doing it? Maybe like, do you feel like that's a safe bet, or just ask more questions around it. I think too. Like there are times where my daughter's like, oh, I'm getting ready to go camping. And I'm like, okay, well, let's, I was scared. And I went to, there's someone I talked to and they suggested getting an air tag. I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's try to eliminate some of my fears and still allow her to have her freedom. Let's make her safe as safe can be, because we're not meant to hide out and hermit for our entire life. That for me is just to rest, recover, and build strength. But we're meant to be out there because we live here too. This is my planet too. I don't need to hide. I don't need to hide from my neighbors or community members that just want to be a bitch and just be difficult. I don't need to do that. I deserve space too. And so it's a matter of like learning how to protect myself. And so I've had to talk to my kids about protecting themselves. So they can see certain amounts of predatory behavior, but I see they're still struggling with other types. And so they don't want to believe that, because I didn't want to believe that when I was that age. And I said, okay, I kind of offer up some seeds, and I step back and I say, well, this is my experience. It doesn't have to be yours, but normally when this kind of happens, and what I've noticed is they're learning. They're picking this stuff up, and they're, it's I suggested it previously, and I don't know in whole if they're just learning it or if it's from the seeds that I'm planting. And so that makes me want to step back a little bit and just focus on having like being there to support them along the way as a safety net and support, but also I think it's about being more intentional with the conversations that I'm having with them. Like, it's not micromanaging, but it's like, do you think they need anything here? Do you think they could use some help here? And this is, like I said, like sometimes we need to start over and over. So sometimes your kids need help starting over. So that's what I mean. I have 2 rooms for my kids. If they ever need to come back and start over to get back out again, that is an option. That is expected. That will not be a surprise to me, because I've had to reset and restart. I didn't have the option to go anywhere but here, and so I've just had to figure that out. And so I've told them that. They've seen that. I do talk about my struggles, what I've gone to and gone through, and I do think by them seeing that, they kind of see, oh, mom did this, and so mom was safe, so if she can do it, I can do it. And if I can't do it, then I do have mom as a safety net, right? But I can see they're trying, they're flexing their wings, they're doing, they're thinking. There's things going on there. It's not like a stuck energy, but there are challenges they're gonna definitely have. But like, I'm working through those, and so that's the PTSD is important, because in the beginning I could feel that as a trigger, and I could just, you're narcissistic just like your dad, you're narcissistic just like your aunt, you're narcissistic just like your grandma, or and because like people are like, well, narcissistic means intentionally abusive, but like, yeah, for me it's like it's an immaturity and an entitlement that you just get to keep showing up this way, and you still have access to my energy that I am improving, I am elevating, right? It's like I don't mind. It's kind of like someone always showing up without anything, and it's like, I can understand a rough period or rough patch, but if you have money for other things, but you can't bring things for us, like where we're bringing things for you, that we need to look at that like on an ongoing. This isn't just a rough patch. This is a choice of period of life. Like, accept me as I am. This is who I am. Well, okay, I'm not accepting you like this, and this is not okay. Kids are different. These are my responsibilities. I did not give them and provide them what they needed growing up, so I do feel responsible for that. And so that is my job as a parent now, as long as they're willing to be a participant, to say, okay, you know what? So like, I enter seeds here, and I enter pumpkin seeds, seeds that are obvious and quick growing, and we have conversations. And because my son will look at me like, well, you're doing things like this and that, and we said, well, I had to, because I couldn't continue the way I was, because it was exhausting me and I was being depleted, and so I had to reset and rest. And so if your nervous system is a certain way and you're working in a toxic environment and you are not nurturing yourself and giving yourself enough rest, you cannot become successful in the long run without becoming codependent of other toxic dynamics. That's just my experience. And so even though I've seen people with money, I'm like, how did you make money? There's underlying things. They made money, but they were able to like fake it till they make it in order to get money from those people that are gullible or vulnerable. And I'm not repeating patterns. I'm not going to become the abuser. So for me, it's taking me a little bit longer to make my money, because I want to do it in the right way, and I don't want to be delusional. But I also have to recognize where sometimes I hold myself back because of all the negative people I've experienced, and that sometimes those people will stop me from moving forward. And so like, I'm working through that. It's a flex I have to work to get better at, and that's just how I see it. It's taking me more time, but I do think these are things I'm developing and accumulating and keeping and retaining, and it's 2 birds, 1 stone. So once I get more confident in my work world and stuff, I think that'll develop my confidence more into my relationships and things, or vice versa, whatever, how you have it. And I'll learn how to grow more consistent and slowly, instead of like shooting up and then falling over like a seedling who has not been managed properly. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I know that's a little bit longer, but I'm trying to do videos that are shorter and longer. So that's my PTSD, my experience with my kids is like, I've really, instead of seeing them as a rebellion, which was also my parents' take on things, and while I did have to give them some space to grow on their own, to experience life outside of me, I still also had to continue doing work so that I could also free up space for them to come back to me, if that makes sense. And so not only just not to rely on me, we're meant to be a family, and we're all meant to be equal members in the family. And just because they're kids doesn't mean they don't have value, because they have less life here. They have a lot of insight. They have a lot of perspective that I didn't have. They told me things that I wasn't seeing, and like vice versa. So we can actually, that's how we work together as a team. Like sometimes I have a blind spot, sometimes they do. That's how we work. But everybody is looking to contribute in a fair way, and nobody is looking to take unfairly. I've never had to worry about my kids stealing from me, and I've never had to worry about sometimes like when they're like, I've been dishonest with myself, so I can't be completely honest with other people, so I can see maybe that sort of factor. But there's always a want and a willingness to grow, and that's another example that I'm blessed to have, because if my kids can grow further than the adults that I've known, that is a choice. That is a choice that they've chosen, and this is something to look at. So with that being said, I'm going to close it off. Hopefully this is helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe, and comment if you have something to say in the comments. I'd love to hear from you if you've experienced this, if you found this helpful. I'm trying to share my differences of perspectives that have helped me grow and become unstuck, and also help my connections. And there are ways to donate financially if you're comfortable and capable in the description box as well. So thank you for my subscribers that are here. Thank you for the ones that are viewing my content and spending time with me. Thank you for the people who give feedback when I ask for it. That is helpful for me. And yeah, and thank you for the likes. I do appreciate them. So I will see you in the next one, and take care. Thank you.